You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello and welcome to the first Fezcast of December. Easier doing it this way, Matt. You don't have to remember what episode it is. You just say it's the first one of December. And joining me, I haven't seen you for a while, Matt. You and me have been avoiding each other, haven't we?
Well, I mean, 2 in a row for me this season is probably the first time. So yeah, it's good to try and be a little bit more regular. Actually, back from work on time as well. So yeah, good to see you, mate.
Yeah, you too. And also joining us is Alec, who, thankfully, because you were at the game at Ealing Trailfinders, weren't you, Alex, where Saracens became not only the North London, the original North London club, as they've been making big deal about it, the original London club now. Sort of like that's that level completed on the games, as it were, Alex.
Yeah, it was a good game. Good to get a win over both London sides now as well.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Well, let's start there, shall we, Alex? And say, I mean, it was another fine win, as we say, for the original London club. And I mean, I'm loving the ramping up on the bravado that we're getting from the social media team. I think it's absolutely fantastic. But with bravado has to come performance, doesn't it? And, you know, after a fast start from the home side, we pretty much dominated Ealing Trailfinders, didn't we, Alex?
Yeah, I was slightly worried after they scored their first try. I thought, oh, has this week's break done us no good? And actually, we're a bit rusty. But it went really well. And we actually, kept them out of the 22 for most of the game and kept just going forward and capitalising on almost any mistake that they made. We seemed to be able to capitalise on that. I think having really quick speed on the ball was really helpful. I think Olivia Apps at scrum half has come in and just helped us move the ball quickly, and teams don't know what to do when they come up against it.
Well, Matt, that's the thing, isn't it? And we've been talking about Olivia Apps quite extensively after every women's game. And, well, Liv, she's just doing the business, isn't she? She is different customer. No disrespect to the other guys who are playing in that position. World class gives you world class performances and world class dominance, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, she's here on a short, in theory, on a short-term deal, and it's almost like she's trying to cram a full season's worth of performances into half the season. But yeah, like Alex said, I've seen the highlights of the game, and highlights packages at the moment are just a series of tries, and they don't really show you an awful lot more. But what was very clear was just how quickly the ball was coming out of a ruck, or the speed out of hand among the players, and Liv is setting the pace for that, and it's probably something that we can link to a chat about the men's game soon as well. But yeah, she's been phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it is different class, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, though, Alex, I mean, and looking at the match report afterwards, there was a very clear comment made that it was collision dominance. And, I mean, Olivia Apps, as great a scrum half she is, and I know that because she is such a good player, if she was behind a pack that wasn't dominant, she would still put in performances. But, I mean, she's been given an armchair ride at the moment. And, Poppy Cleal, May Campbell, Liz Craig, Marley Packer all got tries. How dominant were the pack on that game? I mean, it seemed like they beat up Ealing Trailfinders and chewed them up for breakfast almost.
Yeah, it's really dominant. And I think, we've managed to get our scrums and our lineouts right this season, which means we've got that platform to play off. And that Liv Apps can then get the ball out of the scrum or off the line out, and we can release the backside Jess Breach and Lottie Sharp, who can then go and score tries. But also we have the option to go through the middle with people like Marley Packer and Poppy Cleal, and we know that's also likely to lead to a try. And I think having those options is really important when we go and face opposition like Exeter and like Gloucester Hartbury.
That's an interesting comment you made there, Alex, because I mean, we've seen this week that Abby Dow has retired at the age of 28 from all rugby. I mean, just said that's it. I mean, she was without a club, obviously, so there's maybe that's, she missed out there, and maybe that's prompted her. But a player of her level at 28, say that's it, I've had enough. And then you look at Marley Packer, Poppy Cleal. These are women, what you would say, coming into the veteran stage of their career without wishing to be rude about them. And, I mean, I wouldn't say it to their faces because I wouldn't want to be beaten up, Alex. But, they've still got a fire and a hunger, haven't they? And we've mentioned it before, and it seems to be undiminished. They've got unfinished business, players of their age.
Yeah, I think, that's probably down to the club. Like when Abby Dow left Trailfinders, she said it's due to a difference in philosophy. You don't get that from players at Saracens, really. They want to do it for the club and they want to win another title with Saracens. They don't want to go to a Gloucester where there's a good chance they're going to win. They want to do it with this club and with these people. And I think that's what kind of drives them forward because they know they're putting their body on line, but so is everyone else on the field. And then that's what's going to hopefully get us to another title.
Well, indeed. I mean, Matt, I suppose the question to ask is, and we've mentioned this on a number of occasions now, we've now got new co-captains, May Campbell and Zoe Harrison, who seem to be doing a pretty damn good job of it, making a really good fist of that captaincy, which has meant that players like Marley Packer, who have been leaders and are still leaders. I mean, and we'll talk about it with the men's game about leaders on the field that perhaps used to be captain, no longer are, but still captain. Marley Packer, though, she seems to have been released from all of that pressure that comes along with being a captain and everything, and he's just said, focus on your game. She's dropped a couple of kilos maybe, and she really is enjoying her rugby because I think she's just gone back to the coalface, being one of the girls, as it were, as opposed to figurehead, and it's invigorated her game this season.
It has, yeah. I mean, to be honest, one of the things I was going to say was even looking at the highlights package. I think there's a few of the team that have benefited from a summer in the gym potentially, a lot leaner, a lot stronger, a lot faster, etc. Marley noticeably was all over the pitch. Someone I thought didn't feature as much at the World Cup as she might have wanted to, and perhaps that was a target for her, and she wanted to finish her career at that point. I don't think any of us would have been surprised, but she's carrying on. She's got plenty of minutes under her belt this season already. Probably isn't necessarily your first person on the team sheet at the back row, but definitely well worth the start. But yeah, it just looks like she's, like you say, she's playing with the drive and intensity and hunger that she's always had, but has just got a bit more freedom about her. And for Zoe and May to be taking on some responsibility or some additional responsibilities what they already had. I mean, they're 10 years plus into their time at Saracens, which seems incredible, really. So they are very much senior figures in the team. So it seems like it's created a little bit of even more balance within the squad, just having the setup as it is.
Indeed. I mean, you mentioned Zoe Harrison there, Matt. And I mean, yeah, she's having a fantastic season as well, isn't she? I mean, she's got some pressure coming through from the likes of Amelia McDougall, which, again, she's not guaranteed a start. Although, if Zoe Harrison's fit, she plays, she captains. But more importantly than that, she is difference between Saracens and a lot of teams, primarily because of her accuracy from the tee and her ability from the tee that not a lot of other women in have got that ability, but also her game management is just outstanding, isn't it, Matt?
It is. I mean, we've talked about it quite a lot before, and you go back to when we first started doing the Fezcast, that the key difference between Saracens women and every other team in the league was Zoe Harrison could kick from hand, from the tee, whatever. It just wasn't part of the women's game. And that has now developed. And actually, for a time, Zoe was and still is one of many international quality fly halves, and was perhaps not the best at certain facets of the game, and didn't have the more sort of Holly Aitchison style of running up to the line, breaking the line, being a more sort of dynamic 10. And Zoe has added that to her game. So I'd actually flip it the other way around and say, Zoe's kicking is as good as it ever was, but it's the other parts of her game that she's actually taken to the next level, which is why she's still the number one fly half in England.
Well, absolutely, and so she should be. But Alex, I suppose the question to ask is now: are we seeing, what was it, 5-6 games in now? Are we seeing a clear demarcation between the top two sides, Gloucester Hartpury and Saracens, being the cream of the cream, and then everybody else playing for that third and fourth position, Alex?
Yeah, I think, there's several teams that could make the top four, but actually what we're seeing is teams like Ealing and Bristol that are competing for the top positions, they play Saracens and Gloucester Hartpury and get obliterated, and they can only get a few points on the board, and actually those top teams are putting 50, 60 points on you, which is good for the league. There's more competition lower down, but actually we want to see teams being competitive with Saracens and Gloucester Hartpury. You want there to be jeopardy about who finishes in the top two. Yes, we want Saracens to be there, but also it's no good for Saracens if we're putting 40, 50 points on every team we play, and then we go to play Gloucester Hartpury, and then they, can't top us because we haven't had necessarily the same quality of opposition when we played other teams, and then that doesn't prepare us enough to go and play in a semi-final or final against likes for Gloucester Hartpury.
Well, yeah, it's a very good point you make there. And I suppose the only thing we could say to that, Alex, is the fact that it's the same with Gloucester Hartpury, isn't it, really? I mean, clearly this season, Saracens and Gloucester are the two big dogs, as it were. They're the ones that everybody's going to shoot at. And perhaps in previous seasons, you've looked at games and you thought, well, Quinns could run us close, or Bristol should run Gloucester close. And that's not happening. And you wonder whether that's been to the detriment of the league, the fact that Gloucester and Saracens have really, really stepped up. And, it's not their fault that they've been able to step up, but every other club doesn't seem to have been able to keep pace with them.
Yeah, and I wonder, other teams will see that, okay, this is what Saracens doing, this is what Gloucester Hartpury doing, and they can try to match that. But it's, players ultimately want to go where they're likely to win. That's what they want to do. So actually, it's how do other players like Ealing, like Loughborough, who aren't necessarily winning those big games, keep attracting players. Ealing have recruited well over the summer, but there's actually keeping those players at the club when they're not doing so well, and building from that rather than just bringing in new people, but then they leave after a couple of seasons because they're not getting the place in the table they wanted to.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, it is a very difficult balancing act to make, isn't it, Matt?
It is, yeah. I mean, it's really tricky to look at the PWR season. It has been for a couple of years because you only play 16 games. And most of the time, we sit here and go, well, we're only 5 games in. You can't really tell what the picture is yet. But actually, one more game, that's a third of the season done. Harlequins and Bristol have had an awful start to the season, and they're miles back already. I think they're sitting second last, and third last. I think Leicester haven't picked anything up. So I think the only thing for us is the way it's worked out so far. We've lost to Gloucester, and the 4 wins that we've had are against the current bottom 4 in a table of 9, which it's a very small league, but we've got to play everyone that is slightly closer to us in the table coming up, one of which is going to Sandy Park to play Exeter, which hasn't always been, in fact it rarely is easy for us. So yeah, we'll see what it looks like halfway through.
It's a question, and it brings us on to the next game for the women, which is Loughborough Lightning, which is at a Stonex this weekend. And obviously, if you can get along, do get along. I mean, the price of tickets is ridiculously cheap, and it's you get your car park, whatever. It's great to see people there. But Loughborough Lightning, Alex, they look like they could potentially be the next side to break into that top 4. I mean, they've had a really good start to the season. They've lost to the teams you expect them to lose to. But also, they put 50 points on the Tigers on the weekend. And yeah, I know Tigers are a bit of the whipping girls of the league at the moment, but they've still got to put that work in, and they've done really, really well. As I say, recruited well, still got a base of players there, been there for a little while, and they seem to be getting that template right, don't they, Alex?
Yeah, and I think, Loughborough will come at us and go, this is a game we want to target. even if they don't win, they'll want to put, get 4 tries, get a bonus point, etc. So actually, it's how do we keep pushing? And even if we've got the win, we need to keep our defence up. We've done well to only let 1 or 2 tries in previous games, but actually we want to try and keep it like that, because it could come down to points difference with how the league's going, with how close it is. And we want to make sure that we've got a good points difference at the end of the season, which could ultimately be the difference between us getting a home semi-final or not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Again, that's what us and Gloucester Hartpury seem to have been doing through this season. And that game back at StoneX when we do play Gloucester Hartpury could be really, really key as the first or second, and then who gets the supposedly easier home semi-final. But that's something to look forward to in the future. Well, as I say, Loughborough Lightning on the weekend. Let's hope it's another cracking game and another impressive performance, as I'm sure it will be from the ladies. We'll take a break there, and then we'll come back and talk in the next part about some red cards.
Hey, it's Charlie Hodgson, and you are listening to the Fezcasts.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to part 2 of the Fezcast, and want to widen our discussion a little bit to the wider world of rugby, but I am going to drag it eventually back to Saracens, Matt, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But recent weeks we've seen rather a lot of red cards, and I wasn't on last week and I never got a chance to mention the South Africa-Ireland game, which was absolutely crazy. But Matt Carley took a bit of grief there for the amount of cards, but I don't really think there was nothing really he could do about that. I mean, and it seems to be, to me, a common theme in recent weeks that refs are getting the blame for players' inability, despite them being highly paid professionals, to get the basics correct. I don't think the responsibility here, Matt, is on the referees. It is on the players who train every day, 2 to 3 hours every day. They've probably better. I mean, I've coached kids from 11s to 18s. Some of the mistakes these players are making and their inability to work out the mistakes they're making and change, I wouldn't expect the under-14s at Abingdon to not get that one right.
Yeah, I mean, I made the point last week that obviously once repeat infringements are being made and once Carley's given the first yellow card, it does always annoy me that they almost sort of reset the count a little bit and then give them another 5 or 6 penalties before they start talking about the next yellow card. If they keep offending, then once you've given a yellow, you've got to keep giving yellows, in my view. But it was a very strange game, wasn't it, that one?
Yeah, it was. I mean, the problem there was, and we'll talk about it, I suppose, when we talk about the Saracens game, in particular with the front row, like Andrew Porter, I think has got away with illegal scrummaging for the last 5 seasons. And finally, somebody's actually turning around and penalising him, and he hasn't got a clue how to get around it because he's got away with it for 5 seasons. You're right. If someone had turned around to him 5 seasons ago and said, Andrew, you're not really meant to be doing it that way, he would be a lot better player now. Okay, let's think about it this way. Mistakes do happen, don't they, Alex? However, there is no excuse for the 3 red cards that we've seen this weekend. There's 2 in the top 14, Alex, and 1 versus Wales in a pointless game, other than the score, of course. Number 1, Evan Estebev. You're probably far too young to remember him starting out his career, but I've always said, once a thug, always a thug. And there is absolutely no excuse for what he did on the field on the weekend. And he should, if rugby is serious about these things, receive a lengthy ban at potentially the end of his career. Certainly internationally, Alex.
Yeah, and it's stuff like that. It's like there's no reason to that. It's not like something's happened in a tackle where, you can say, oh, okay, it's going fast. It could be like rugby incidents and stuff. It's stuff like that. It's just like, that's your decision to go and do that. And it's no reason to do that. And that's the kind of thing where it's like, even, players on his own team are going, yeah, that's a red card. Because they knew there was nothing that, you could say that would excuse that or say, oh, it could be him trying to do this. So I think, yeah, stuff like that. It's like, there's no reason to do it. And there's no kind of, way of explaining, or no other reason they could, he could say, oh, I was doing this. There's no excuses. it is what it is, and actually that, is just wrong.
Yeah, 100%. And even Razzie Erasmussen. I mean, I'm not the greatest Razzie Erasmus fan, Matt, but he's come out and said, look, the optics don't look great. It's a red card. I can't say anything more than that. And I mean, he's not come out and completely destroyed the player and thrown him under a bus, but he said, that's not how we play the game. And I mean, I remember being the captain once and seeing my blindside bombs in a scrum half's eyes, and I turned around when the scrum half got up and kicked him in the head and got sent off, and I turned around to the referee and said, well, if you're sending him off, you can send my blindside off. And he went, why? I said, because I saw what he did. There is absolutely no place in the game for that kind of thuggery, is there, Matt?
There isn't, no. And as I said, it's there's been a few incidents over the last couple of years of alleged or confirmed eye gouging. And most of the time they're on the ground in a ruck. I'm not saying there's any excuse for it, but it does sometimes happen unintentionally, but very recklessly. But that is standing up. He's gone for him, and it looks like he's deliberately gone for his eye. It's just on another level of of thuggery. Yeah, there's no place for it in the game at all. And we'll just have to see what happens. I mean, Razzie Erasmus had to say what he said. Really, there was no other way of going about it, although the use of the word optics was probably a bit of a Freudian slip.
Well, he got a thumbs up from me.
But yeah, I mean, look, there's going to be people saying he should be banned for a year, 2 years, banned for life, never play rugby again. The precedent, the last person I think to be done for eye gouging was the fella for Glasgow in the Champions Cup last year, and I think it was either 6 or 8 weeks of a relatively similar incident. So we'll have to see. But that could be, it could be the end of his international career potentially. Yeah.
Personally, I think it should be. I mean, I'm one of those people who feel that is the lowest of the low. It really is unacceptable. And we've got a responsibility. If we want kids to play this game, we have a responsibility to present the game in its best possible way. And yeah, you're right, Matt. Situations occur on the field, a bit of handbags here, whatever, that's part of the game, and kids will do that and they'll learn that. And the referees are pretty good at getting that resolved, and World Rugby is. In this situation, you've got a man here who's got 141 caps. He's played the game for 20 years nigh on, and 12 years at the top. He's won the World Cup twice. He has to know better. But the other thing I've got to say is, and now, Saffers, Fox fans, stop talking about Owen Farrell and Shoulder Boy now, because, they go on about Owen Farrell being a thug and not tackling with his arms and everything after that Osterhausen hit he put in. I'm sorry, the moral high ground has shifted right from underneath your feet. If you ever mention Owen Farrell and being a thug again, I will just come back to you with Benez to Beth.
Yeah, you can't really argue with it, but I'm sure they will.
Well, yeah,
what we don't, I'm not gonna. There's no excuse for it at all. What we don't know is whether there was absolutely anything that pushed his buttons. But that will all come out in the wash, and that will be part of the ban, really. But
I think even if there was something that pushed his buttons, and that's the last word I'll say on this, he, as 141 cap international, should have got up and thought, I'm going to stick my thumb in his eyes, and then gone, no, I'm not. Oh, no, I'm going to stick my thumb in his eyes. No, I'm not. I'm going to stick my thumb. No, I'm not. And, he had opportunity. And that's what will make it worse, is because it was clearly premeditated and he never stopped. He'd lost his head. There's no two ways about it. And the red mist had come down, but that's no excuse. So, but there we go. Got that one over. And I'm hoping Evan isn't listening, because if he's still in the country, I'll be a bit bunker if you come after me, mate. But there we go. Shall we move on? Have a little quick break there, and then we'll discuss bath time, shall we, in our final part of this show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for 10 quid. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at StoneX. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Bath game on the weekend. Well, I think what we'll do, Matt, Alex, I think we'll start with some free word reviews, and we'll go through the free word reviews and reply to them all, because I think there's been some really good ones here, and they sort of fit into a number of different sections. But first up, Debbie Knight, friend of the Fezcast from old and talking rugby, etc., etc. Her free word review, Matt, was great rugby game, and at the time, with our Saracens hats on, I'm not sure that we would necessarily agree with that being partisan, because, you know, disappointments, etc., etc. But actually, if you were a neutral, it was a great game of rugby, wasn't it, Matt?
It was. It flowed end to end. I think, as always, referees get a lot of criticism, but I think one thing that did go well was it flowed. The game flowed very, very well. There wasn't a huge amount of stoppage. There wasn't a huge amount of mucking around, and it was played at a pretty fast pace. The first half certainly disappeared almost in the blink of an eye, I think. So yeah, I would have to say, yeah, for a neutral, probably a great game to watch.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Christoph Ridley, the referee, and you'll notice, though, Matt, that I never mentioned him in our WhatsApp group one little bit, did I? So, obviously,
No.
I didn't have a problem with him, so, I mean, which is a good state of affairs, Alex. We'll move on to some of the moans, and we can discuss those, Alex. But Rugger Hugger 70, Disillusioned Pensioner, which I think is a great name, and I'm not sure they're necessarily disillusioned because of Rachel Reese's budget or whatever like that, but certainly about the rugby side of things. They said better side won. Rugby Saracens said win slipped away, and then we've got a bit more into it with Drew Crayford saying poor game management, Gavin McGuckin saying stop bloody kicking, and getting most of the grief here, Ted's here, weak at 9, with Richard Adams adding in no more interceptions. And I think that's the problem, isn't it, Alex? The first 10 minutes, we raced into a 14-point lead with Max Malin scoring, you know, another contender for try of the season. We had our foot on Bath's throat and we let it off, Alex.
Yeah, I think we got almost too comfortable with the fact we had the lead, and we almost forgot we've got an entire game to still play. And actually, we should have kept attacking more. And instead, either we were just almost happy to defend and let them come to us, or when we were trying to attack, it's almost like we were trying to do too much. Instead of going to what we knew and what we knew we could do, we were trying to like get it away quickly, which is good if we can do that. But actually, if we're not sure the pass is on or it might get intercepted, then if we can try other stuff and make sure that we actually just keep the ball, then that will set up us well for the future.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, the question there is weak at 9 from Ted's here. Ivan Van Zyl has come in for a bit of flack this season from a number of different avenues. I don't think he's playing at the levels we've seen him a couple of years ago. One question I think is captaincy when he's captain, is that weighing too heavy on his shoulders? Is that stopping him making the right decisions as a player? But, you know, he just isn't quite at the races, is he? I don't think. And when Charlie Brackett came on, he proved a bit more, didn't he? We got back into the game, Matt.
Yeah, I don't like digging into people on these shows, but unfortunately, I'm looking at the way Ivan's played this year and the hot and cold season he had last season. I'm trying to think whether this is his 4th or 5th year with Saracens. And I'll be honest, I think he's had one absolutely fantastic season for Saracens, the season we won the league. And I'm not convinced every other year. I think there's a reason we're looking at Thomas Williams coming in. But yeah, something's not quite right. I think there were elements of last season where you could look at it, the ball's coming out slowly and I think it's because of what's in front of him in the forwards. But yeah, I think just the decision making is a little bit off. And I said it about Owen Farrell the season before he disappeared, the amount of times he was charged down or had a pass intercepted. It's happened to Ivan over the last couple of years. And I think it is just partly a lack of 100% confidence in exactly what he's doing. So I don't know what the answer is. I think you're right that the captaincy probably, I get why it was done, to give him a senior position in the team, and we're basing a lot of stuff around him, but I don't think it's quite worked. So yeah, I think he needs a bit of time to figure out how he's playing his game, and Charlie coming through is fantastic, and Ivan still has good games. He will play better than that this season. I'm not gonna. We didn't lose that game because of Ivan Van Zyl. Yes, there are 7 points that are attributed to him, and it's a draw at that point. But you can't just say, well, that didn't happen, we draw the game. A lot of other things happened within that game. But I think we'd have had a much better chance of winning if he played as he did 2 years ago, or if Charlie Bracken had started.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I mean, you're right, though. You can't lay it entirely at his feet. It is a team game, Alex. And Ben Ridgen, his 3-word review was set piece woes. And there were 2 places where we really did cost us. Now, first up, scrum time. I felt personally that Marco Riccioni didn't get the rub of the green, and a different day, different ref may well have been a different picture. However, Matt will tell me that, and before I'll ask your opinion, Alex, to be the referee, because Matt, he looked at it on the game and saw Marco Riccioni going to his knees quite a lot. I felt it was because Beno Urbano was retreating on the contact and on the collision, which caused him to go down. How did you see it, Alex? Do you feel it was Marco not being able to cope with a little bit of kidology from the bar front row, or how did you see it going?
I think it was probably a bit of both of Marco not kind of coping with what Bath was putting on him, but also Bath not maybe pulling their weight. But I think it's his responsibility to then say to the ref, this is what's happening. And also, if the ref's not seeing what he's, seeing, then he needs to change something and either make the ref see it or make sure it doesn't happen. Sometimes the ref isn't going to see what you see or what, the team wants them to see. So actually, it's about how do we either make the ref see that or make sure we play in a way that then the ref's happy.
I suppose the thing that we could say about that, though, Matt, is the fact that the coaching staff obviously identified that as a problem. And, Christoph Ridley was consistent in what he was asking for. And the fact that Reece and Marco weren't coping with what Christoph was looking at, and I'm going to be very kind of Chris because I'm a friend with him on Facebook, and I do tag him in every time I post on Facebook as well. So if he is listening in, I thought he had a very, very good game, and he's an exceptionally good referee. If you ever do want to come on, Christoph, you're more than welcome to join us. But the coaching staff recognised that there was an issue there and brought Aroni Maui and Marcus Street, who was very impressive, I thought, when he came on. They brought him on early doors second half, and we sort of got back to a bit of parity at scrum time.
Bit of a chess game, the scrum, isn't it? Not that I understand anything that happens in scrums, and nor do most people, if they're being honest. But yeah, the picture wasn't right. They changed the picture. But yeah, you're right. Marcus Street coming on, I think, did make quite a difference. And yeah, it is just one of those things, and especially in rugby today, once penalties at set pieces start going against you, it's very, very difficult to turn the tide of that, or at least to completely reverse it and start getting penalties the other way. Because once a gnarly old prop knows he's got the upper hand, every trick in the book gets played, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. But of course, the other issue with the forwards, Matt, was the line out. And I think we missed Jamie George. And I know you spoke to Jamie on the weekend, and he's proper done his hamstring, hasn't he? So we could be working without him for a little while. But Theo Dan had an amazing game in the loose. I mean, he was making yards every time he got the ball. I mean, sometimes it was sideways, but he was looking for gaps and then going through gaps. But he, in that situation where the scrum is failing, Jamie George would have had a word with Christoph Ridley and said, "What do you want us to do?" And I don't think Theo Dan's got that yet in his game. He hasn't got that same authority that Jamie George has got, which Jamie George had at Theo Dan's age. And if you remember that famous final in Lyon where he came on for Shark Brits, who'd gone off for a head injury, and we were getting ripped apart at scrum time, and he just said to the referee, "What do you need to do?" And then as he walked back off for Shark to come back on, he told Shark Brits what he needed to do. And that won that final for us. So we missed Jamie George's influence at scrum time, but Theo's line-out throwing is... It's almost as if you're going to play Theo Dan at the moment, play him at open side and have James Hadfield starting as hooker, because that's taken away from his game, and it's a shame because he's doing some really, really good stuff in the loose.
Yeah, I mean, the only issue I have with him in the loose is he finds a bit of room, picks a gap, but he does get turned over quite a lot as well. He almost sort of overruns himself a little bit and is thinking about breaking contact rather than getting the ball back to a teammate. So that happened a couple of times against Bath. So good and bad, really, from Theo. But you're right. Some of the meters he made at playing crash ball rugby was phenomenal. But you can coach the game of rugby to anyone, really, but the mental side is so tricky, and you can only assume that there's something mentally not quite right with his line out throwing. He's got dartitis, isn't he? He's playing like Eric Bristow.
Yeah.
That's one for Alex.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what the answer is there, to be honest. It started off okay. I think there were a few lineouts that went pretty well, and we also had a sort of mild advantage to him, really, that we had Theo McFarlane, Nick Ezekwe, and whoever else on the pitch all at the same time, who are very, very good catchers, line-out operators that can make up for a poor throw. But yeah, some of them went so badly wrong, mistimed. It was... What do you do, to be honest? What do you do? I really feel for him, and I feel for the coaches that have got to try and work with him to sort it out, because otherwise he's still playing in England rugby. He's still an international level player. Yeah,
I mean, I suppose that's the thing. I mean, what you're looking at is how many times do you have lineouts? And I mean, you have a lot more lineouts than scrums, and lineouts are a potent weapon. And the amount of times we got down, had a penalty, we put it right in the corner, and then you have no confidence as to whether, where you want to be putting an attacking line out in. You're going into the front man because you're just trying to guarantee a ball, and it does cut everything down.
Yeah. There was a point in the game where I turned around to my dad. A ball's gone out for a line out. I said the only thing he can do is just overthrow this line out by 10 metres, because that's the way we get the ball back. Just launch it over the entire thing to someone at centre.
Yeah,
that's because it's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, Gareth Baxter, his 3-word review, Alex, was full strength soon. I think he's making the point that we were missing some players on the weekend. I mean, I'm not sure that team that we put out wasn't pretty strong, Alex. I mean, let's be honest about it. You had every single starting position was a current international, I think, apart from Hugh Tizard. Everybody else was an international, or an Ivan Van Zyl probably, or has played international rugby. So, I mean, there was a lot of strength. I mean, Maratoji not starting, he's on a rest, obviously, after, doing what he's been doing for the whole summer. He deserves a rest, and I think he would have held the lineouts because he's a great lineout caller, and he's got that in his bank that would help Theo Dan out, I think. But the Tom Willis injury cost us, didn't it, Alex? I mean, he was beginning to get into that game. He was beginning to put Arthur Green under a bit of pressure, a young lad playing at 8 for Bath. But as soon as he went off, we seemed to have lost something. And I mean, especially when we consider that we ended up with Nick Ezekwe playing open side, which I don't think he'll have ever played in his life before. Certainly not at this level, Alex.
Yeah, and I think that almost it changed something like mentally for the players. And it's almost like once that went wrong, other stuff started to go wrong. We couldn't get a grip on the game again. But I think that's something, they'll need to prepare for. You're gonna have players go off injured sometimes. And it's actually making sure that when someone comes off the bench, even if they're not playing in their first or second position, you can still cope with that and you adjust your game so that it works with the players we've got rather than trying to still make it work with players that we don't have on the field.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, people should be coming into the side and regardless being able to produce. I mean, that's why they're in the squad. And then we'll talk about Bath later on from the last one of the last 3-word reviews. But yeah, I just a bit concerned that when it started to go a bit wrong, we didn't change things up quick enough. And this leads on to a 3-word review from Ben Hoeksemar, which is quite good given the time of year. We're coming up to Christmas, but we'll go Old Testament here. He said, Noah isn't God. And he put in brackets to stop basing the entire game plan around him. Now, Alex, I'm not sure that they did base the entire game plan around him, but he was marked well, and people have worked out that he is an effective weapon. And I mean, there was the one take he took from a restart, which was just out of this world, wasn't it? But then, Bath let him do it, got over him, and turned him over. So, I think it took us too long to realise this. But we weren't just kicking in because Theo McFarlane was, being used on the other wing in exactly the same way. But did you feel a little bit like we were centering our game around the wonder kid, as it were?
I think a little bit. And I think, teams now know that if they're not going to be able to get up and compete for the ball in the air, that actually they're not going up and they're ready to then attack him when he's on the ground. And we don't necessarily always have the players there to provide the support. So actually, if we do want to use the aerial game, we have to make sure we've got the players to provide the support once Noah or Theo McFarlane or whoever comes down from the air, so that then that Bath aren't turning the ball over instantly. But I think also if teams know that we're going to constantly go to the wing, kick the ball to players like Noah, then we can't. That doesn't become a threat anymore because players and teams just expect it. Actually, we can have that as a potential weapon, but also we need to improve the other areas of the game so that it continues to be a threat and they're not just expecting that every single time.
No, you're right, and I think actually, and we'll move on to our next 3-word review as well, because I think this does lead in. Josh Miller said brave in defeat. Now, I think that's a slightly rose-tinted viewpoint, but it's nice to have somebody with a bit of optimism, Matt, as opposed to a lot of pessimism that we've had. And I have a huge aversion to using the word brave in relation to sport because it's Braves being shot at, or in a battlefield or something like that, isn't it? But there were some players who really did stand out for me. I'm going to mention the first one, second contractual mention of Faz. Owen Farrell had a bit of a curate's egg. He played at 10 for the first time in quite some time. So, I mean, it's going to take a little bit of getting used to, as great a player as he is, moving from 12 into 10. And I think we did look a lot better when he moved back to 12 and Fergus Burke came on at 10, which is great for going forward. But I've got to mention Owen purely for the break, which was a bit like Chariots apart, weren't it, on the beach in slow-mo. You can see Van Gelis playing it. He saw that gap and went, and it was like... It was me and Sharon, we were laughing our head off seeing that because I mean it was like he's seen a gap, it's opened up. I'm going to go through it eventually, and then he just did it. It was fabulous to see, wasn't it, Matt?
It was, yeah. I mean, it took Bath by surprise because whoever expects Owen Farrell to hit a gap, really, it's just not his game, is it? And yeah, I thought he was fine. I thought he was okay. I think Nick Tompkins had a decent game as well. Obviously, having to make a little shift in his game. But yeah, unfortunately, I have to be a little bit negative, and it's not normally me. I think there was 13 players that played pretty well. 2 that we've discussed really didn't have a great game, and Bath took complete advantage of it. So I don't think we can necessarily call it a bad performance, but I think Alex absolutely nailed where our problem was. No, we weren't kicking to Noah Kalori all the time, but I think what was happening is we were chucking it around for a while, and when that didn't work, there was one of three things happening. The first one stopped happening quite quickly because one of it is to give it to Tom Willis and just say, right, okay, run in a straight line, which was happening for 15 minutes or so, which was great. But then we got to our second outlet of if we can't break the line, we'll kick it up in the air and hopefully Noah will catch it. And the other one was Elliot Daly kicking it through somewhere, which works 25% of the time. And actually, I didn't mind that level of kicking game because it happens normally when we run out of ideas now, rather than it being kick it away in the first phase of play. But yeah, that's my rant anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's pick out a couple of players. We'll start with Elliot because I thought the week before for England, he looks off the pace. He was playing out of position on the wing. I don't believe he is a winger. He hasn't got the out and out pace. And if you see that when you look at Harry Arundel, the pace that he put in for that intercept try. If you're playing on the wing these days, you need pace like that. But Elliot, as a fullback, reads the game beautifully, does things that are slightly different, and he complements Owen Farrell, Fergus Burke, whoever. If you've got someone like Nick Tompkins, who, bless him, is not the most creative player, but you use him differently, you need that creative player at the back that we always have with Alex Good and that we have with Elliot Daly and potentially you have with Max Malins as well. And Elliot, I thought, had a really good game, Alex.
Yeah, and I think, it's okay saying, okay, he can cover the wing, but actually, thinking if they don't need him starting the wing, fullback's his better position. And actually, when you play players in the positions that they're better at, and typically the positions they like, you're going to get a better game out of them because they're enjoying it more. And I think you saw that at the weekend with Elliot. Yes, we didn't win, but actually he had a good game and he could read the game a lot better from being at fullback, which meant he could try more things, he could see what was on, what wasn't, and make better decisions from that.
Yeah, absolutely he did. And brilliant. Now, let's move into the pack, Matt, and chat about the two players I think who really did stand out in the pack. And I'll give you the first one, which was Theo McFarland, who was nominated by Austin Healy and Ben Kay on commentary as one of the Saracens players in the knockouts for player of the match. And I think Theo, from a player that you had problems with perhaps 2 seasons ago, where he was inconsistent, that he'd have a mercurial game every now and then have a really poor game. I think at the moment he's developed that he gives you an 8 out of 10 performance pretty much every time he hits the pitch. And I mean, how poor would the line out have been if he hadn't been able to do his one-handed basketball catches and launch it almost to the standoff from the top of the line out? I mean, that one catch he did. I mean, the first time we saw him do it, I thought, well, look at heck, how did you do that? And then you realise it's just the skill he has.
I will admit, I think I still much prefer him at 6 than in the second row. But yeah, you're right. He is playing a lot more consistently. Whether he's, I don't know, in the little bit of churn that we might have in those positions over the next season or so, whether he still fits into all of that, don't know. But yeah, he's definitely added to his game the bit that frustrated me, where he goes missing for a while and then all of a sudden gives you a highlights reel to show you that he can actually play well. So yeah, no, he had a really, really good game at the weekend for sure.
The other player in the back row who, and I think this is potentially where you see why Tom Willis was allowed to go at the end of this season and why potentially other back row players, and you've mentioned what's up, there's rumours around Andy Onyama Christie and whoever, we signed Ben Earl on a contract extension to 2029, but Juan Martin Gonzalez's importance to this side is huge. And I think he is a player that would be attracting big money offers from France, from Japan, from wherever. And that we're turning around and saying, no, okay, we might need to offload some of the salary cap because we need to keep this player, man.
Yeah. I mean, well, you basically mentioned the two important people. Theo McFarland, I would have said to him, look at Juan Martin Gonzalez, and that's what you need to do. He is consistently good. He does a lot of unseen work as well. That's the beauty of it. He's not just that. Yes, he's got a highlights reel every game, but a lot of the graft at ruck time as well. He's fantastic. He is just a workhorse.
It's a very Richard Hill-esque, that.
I'll have to answer that one as well. So no, we're not doing well for Alex here with all of these dated references, are we?
Well, Alex, you must know about Richard Hill. The legend is immense, isn't it?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Go back on YouTube and put Richard Hill blindside in and just watch how good he was. But
probably aren't YouTube highlights of Richard Hill.
I'm sure there is. But the last 3-word review, though, Alex, and I think this is where the game was really won for Bath. Neil Roberts made the point, Bath bench immense, and they did make the difference. And if you look at the players that came off that bench, Will Stewart, British Lion, Ted Hill, England international, Max Ajomo coming off of a man of the match performance for England. I mean, there's a lot of teams, i.e. every other team in that league, that would struggle to cope with a bench that good that Bath were able to choose from. A bit like when we used to bring on players in, say, 2016, 2017 season, and you can make your own conclusions about what I'm saying about that, folks. I'm not going to say it out loud, but I mean, yeah, if they could bring on that quality off of the bench, lots of teams are going to struggle against that, home and away, and we did, didn't we, Alex?
Yeah, and I think that's why Saracens are still a developing side. We're still bringing in players. So actually, the bench doesn't have a lot of experience. It doesn't, have that game management that maybe other players previously have had. But it's also where when we get players like Marrow back, that actually some of the players that started are on the bench and suddenly it looks a lot stronger. So I think it's something that definitely will improve in the coming seasons. But if we know that we don't have a strong bench, we need to make sure that the game's won or in a good position for us to win it before we need to take players off the bench. And actually, then when they come on, they're not trying to chase a win or get us out of a draw, that actually we're in a position where we're already in control of the game. And then they just have to defend and not try and defend, but also get 2 or 3 scores.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is, Bath are the best team in the country, Matt, for a very good reason, because they've got the best players across all the positions. And, let's be optimistic about it. 2 bonus points, that's a kind of a reasonable result, isn't it?
And before the game, that's what I wanted as a minimum. So yeah, that's fair enough. And we all want to have the Bath bombs as they should be coming off the bench. But like Alex said, you had, let's say you had, all right, Jamie George is getting on a bit now, but you had him, you had Mara Itoje to the bench or to the full team that we had. Maybe chuck someone like Alex Lazowski in there as well, and you look at our bench and go, yeah, we've got that as well. So it's we're just a handful of players short due to injury and things, but then most teams are going to be, and yeah, Bath have their forensic audit for winning the league, so we can all shut up after that.
Yes, indeed. Well, next up for Saracens men is the Champions Cup. First game of the Champions Cup, home to old foes Clermont Auvergne, who got a win on the weekend. I mean, what side did the French bring? I mean, we remember games. Do you remember that game where it was pulled off on the Saturday or the Sunday and had to play on the Monday, and it was just horrendous, wasn't it? You couldn't see from one end of the pitch to the other, and it was horrible. And then we go following year at Twickenham, wasn't it? And ripped them apart, whatever. I mean, it's always a good game against Clermont Auvergne, but I mean, what side do the French bring?
Absolutely no idea. It's French rugby. Who knows? I mean, the top 14 itself is. I think there's 5 or 6 points between third and 12th at the moment. So there's not really a lot to say about form. And yeah, some French teams will go to an away match with a completely scratched team, and some French teams will go to an away match with put out their C team and beat us as they did last season. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, the question to ask, Alex, is how important do you think this competition is to Saracens? I mean, do we rest players next week? Do we give somebody a week off, or do we say, right, let's go for it? We got this up until Christmas. We got 3 games. Trip to South Africa, one of those pointless exercises that I really hate, because we won't be facing Steph. But I mean, what do you think we do, Alex?
I think we just have to go for it. There's not that many games before Christmas. And also, we've only just come back from international. So you have got players who've had a rest or who haven't actually played for Saracens in a month. So you want to get them back playing the Saracens way, back playing with their teammates. And actually, we just put out a full team and say, we are going to compete. We don't know where we're going to get, but actually, we're going to put out our first team choice and give it our best shot.
Yeah, I think that's the only way to do it, isn't it, Alex? And, something to look forward to. Shall we finish it there? Because I know we've been rambling on and waffling on, or I have anyway, at least. And I know, Matt, you did say earlier on that the longer it goes on, the more I waffle, the angrier you get. And I'm sure you're off for your tea. And I've got to download this and send it across to you to do the edit and everything. So we'll say, let's have a well done to the women this week. They did really well. And, let's take the positives from the Saracens Bath game, and let's look forward to a great game against Clermont-Auvergne on the weekend.
I'll argue with that.
Indeed, and we'll be back next week, which will be on the 10th of December, and we should have an interview with Mike Heinard next week, shouldn't we? That Duncan's already done, so that's something to look forward to.
It is, yeah. No, it should be really interesting. And Mike is, although he had a little stint away from the Saracens, he's someone who's been around the club for well over a decade total. So, yeah, plenty to say.
Well, yeah, that's something to look forward to next week. But I'll say now, thank you for everybody for listening in to this edition of the First Class. And thank you, Alex. Thank you, Matt, for your time. And we'll speak to you next week and say thank you very much, everybody.
This is the Fezcast.